Hello, podcast world, fellow horticulturists, lovers of plants, gardeners, family, and friends. Welcome to Shrubby Buddies, the podcast, friends with woodies for garden goodies. I'm host Matt Guthrie.
And I'm host Tim Fleischer. Coming at you from Central Ohio, Zone 6B. We're just a couple of public horticulturists and certified arborists with experience in education, landscape design, gardening, retail, and wholesale.
So grab a drink, polish your pruners, dust off that kneeling pad, and let's get down to business. Hey, podcast world, and welcome to this week's episode of Shrubby Buddies podcast. I am host Matt Guthrie, and I am joined with Timmy 2-Point Conversion. Timmy, how are you?
I'm good. How are you, Matt?
I'm doing well. I'm really anxious and excited to have you back. Last week, doing the solo thing by myself, it was fine. It needed to be done, I suppose, and it was good for me to kind of break out of my comfort shell a little bit and all of that good stuff. But yeah, it's better to have you back here with me doing this. So.
Yeah, I'm super duper glad to be here with you, Matthew. I did listen to your podcast once or twice or 17 times, and I thought you did a fantastic job.
You listened to it 17 times?
Flying solo. We'll leave that up for your imagination,
yeah,
but I listened to it.
Once.
It was great. I will say that I'm a little bit jealous because doing one by myself does sound a little bit fun, but I don't think I could because I don't know how to use all these wires and equipment. So if I ever do one alone, I would like you still to be here.
Yeah.
And I'll just be myself.
You just talk and I won't say a word.
No, you don't say a word, but you just do like funny sound effects at the appropriate or inappropriate times.
Perfect.
And that's...
We'll get that on the books for at some point.
Yeah, no rush. Rush. But yeah, I'm glad to be back. I'm sipping on a Hoof-Hearted Brewing Kokomo Drift Double IPA, brewed with Citra, Mosaic, and Motueka hops. So thank you, Chris Regal, for handing me this as a little gift, and thank you to the Hoofy Boys because you kill it with your beers. So shameless plug.
And you're also drinking that out of the Columbus Blue Jackets pint glass that I have for you. And
I am.
Yeah, in honor of the passing of Johnny Gaudreau. If anyone's a sports fan or a hockey fan, I'm sure that you've seen some of that on the news this past week. We are in Central Ohio, so we're Columbus Blue Jackets fans. If you don't know, our star player, beloved hockey player in the NHL, Johnny Gaudreau, a.k.a. Johnny Hockey. Him and his brother were hit and killed this past week by a drunk driver. Unfortunately, they were on a bicycle ride the day before their sister's wedding, and they were both hit and killed. So that's very tragic news for the sports world.
It's just terrible.
The hockey world, the Central Ohio fan base, the Columbus Blue Jackets fan base. And yeah, it's very sad. You know me, I'm a huge hockey fan. So yeah, when I read that, it kind of like it put me in a funk for sure. So, and I think I speak for a lot of people when I say that I was in a funk. I think a lot of people kind of felt that way. So, yeah. So enough of the sad talk there. What's been going on with you? Anything good? Anything that we need to catch up on?
Nothing really. Football season started. My daughter's soccer season started.
Yeah.
I'm drinking a delicious Hoof-Hearted beer with my good buddy Matthew C. Guthrie the First, and about to record a wonderful podcast.
We are recording a
did we start?
Podcast.
Are we recording?
Yeah, bro, we're recording.
Oh shit, that's what that means.
I am drinking. I am with my best good friend Timmy 2-Point Conversion, aka Tim Fleischer, and I am drinking the trusty Fathead's Headhunter IPA.
My go-to.
Your go-to. I would say that it's one of my go-tos for sure as well. You can never go wrong with it.
It's the cleanest, most delicious West Coast IPA in the country. I said it, and I don't regret it.
Amen, brother. Yeah, so here we are recording this podcast. There's not a lot of new stuff that's gone on in my life since last week. The weather's getting better. Still 0 rain. We were told we had an 80% chance of rain, Friday or Saturday, and we didn't get shit. It's still extremely dry, but now it's just very comfortable temperatures.
Yeah.
Like today's high was in the low 70s, I think. Nice breeze.
The dew point's a little sexier than it was last week.
The dew point's low. The humidity's down. So life's better on that end, but we still need the rain. So
it's all about the dew point.
I see Bree Arthur has been posting pictures on Instagram of the rain she's been getting.
Must be nice.
Yeah, I'm like, she's like, oh, much needed 2.5 inches. And I'm like,
cool. Good for you.
Good for you. It just seems like a few weeks ago you were getting hit with a hurricane. So I don't know. Maybe that's been longer than a few weeks ago, but not really, right? When did that hurricane come up through there?
Yeah.
Who knows? Anyways, so here we are, Tim. That's kind of not much of a catch-up for us on the week because there really hasn't been a whole lot going on. We're kind of in that late summer lull, I guess. We're just like
ketchup and mustard.
Yeah, ketchup and mustard, just making sure stuff's watered, stuff's staying alive, and kind of gearing up for the fall season. So,
oh, we're alive, and here we are. We're ready to come at you. We are coming at you.
So this week's episode, Tim.
Yeah. So,
you want to start us off with what we're going to talk about? So,
I had a riddle for you, Matt.
Okay. Hit me.
Okay. What do you call a shrub on drugs?
I don't know, Tim. Please do tell.
A hydrangea, man.
Okay, so a hydrangea, that's a good little segue into this week's episode. And this week's episode, we're just going to not dive in right now on any one specific type of hydrangea, but just kind of give a broad kind of look at hydrangeas, the types of hydrangeas. The one question that we get asked all the time is, how do I prune my hydrangeas? Or more specifically, when do I prune my hydrangeas? And then we're going to go over some of that stuff, and then we're going to go over a few of the cultivars of hydrangea that are getting used frequently, ones that you could look into purchasing if you're thinking hydrangeas, and we'll talk about kind of how you can use those hydrangeas and all of that good stuff. So, intro to hydrangeas, do you want to kind of explain to the listeners what a hydrangea is and all of that good stuff?
Yeah, I'll explain to the listeners that
please.
Joke I told you was original content.
Was it?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I came up with that long ago, so I've been telling that for years. You played along well.
You do have some good plant jokes that I'm sure the listeners are going to be blessed with those great jokes at some point or another, right?
Yeah, thank you. So, yeah, we're going to talk about hydrangeas today. Great. They're a great plant for the landscape. They're a woody plant. Most of them that we're going to talk about today are shrub-like plants. With the exception of one vine. Hydrangeas typically have big flowers that are noticeable from a distance, so they really make a statement when they're blooming, and they bloom for a long period of time. And even when they're done blooming, hydrangea flowers typically stick around. They tend to change colors and still look charming for a good portion of the season. The flowers don't just fall off like many other plants. Hydrangeas come in a whole bunch of different sizes too, is I think another one we're going to hit home on today.
Absolutely.
Is you will, after listening today, you will be able to find a hydrangea for your spot, whether it's on the shadier side or the sunnier side, whether you're looking for something for screening or a large space or something for a very petite space. You're gonna learn about that today. So, just a really great plant to add to your perennial border, and also a great plant to use as kind of a, just a lovely group of shrubs along the foundation of your home or something.
Yeah.
Boxwoods are pretty popular. Hydrangeas aren't evergreen, but they can kind of replace that and just be more showy, like a more showy foundation plant.
Yeah, for sure. I think foundation plantings or even hedges, not necessarily the prim and proper trimmed hedges like a boxwood hedge, but if you're wanting to create a hedge, or maybe you're wanting to do something a little bit different than, say, a Miss Kim or Dwarf Korean lilac, you can kind of hit that that same kind of size, and you're gonna have a nice flowering deciduous shrub. So yeah, just a great all around shrub that can be used in a lot of different uses and all of that good stuff.
So we're going to talk
Very
about a
popular.
handful of different species today, and we're going to go through them. And we're going to start today with panicled hydrangeas.
Yeah.
Hydrangea paniculata.
Yep.
What have you to say,
So
Matthew?
yeah, panicle hydrangea paniculata is probably right now the most popular hydrangea on the market, the one that most people are buying, the one that you probably see the most in commercial and in residential landscapes all across the nation. Let's see. The pruning on the panicle hydrangea, this is diving into the when and how should I prune my my hydrangeas. So with hydrangea paniculata, they flower on new wood.
So they bloom on new wood.
Yeah, they bloom on new wood.
That's interesting that you say that. I get what you mean, but what does that mean? Tell us all what that means.
So basically what it means is in the spring when the flower breaks when the shrub breaks dormancy and it's putting on its new stems or its new shoots, its new growth, it's setting the flower buds on that new wood that it's producing in the spring. It's setting the flower buds then.
So it did not have flower buds over the winter.
It did not have flower buds over the winter.
Okay.
No. So with something that flowers on new wood, like hydrangea paniculata or their panicled hydrangea, you could prune those if you wanted to. You could prune those in the fall after they're done flowering and they've kind of gone dormant for the year. You can go out and cut those back. You can really cut back on them pretty hard, or as much or as little as you want to on those guys. But as long as you're doing it, then basically anytime between late fall and very early spring before the plant kind of breaks dormancy and wakes up for the year, you can go in and prune those guys back, and you're going to have flowers for that year.
So what I'm hearing is that if the hydrangea blooms on new wood, then anytime during that dormant period, you're good to go.
You're good to go.
You're free to cut, and you're not going to disrupt any future blooms because the bloom, the buds for the blooms haven't been set yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, so I would say like here in Central Ohio, anytime from, I don't know, let's just say like mid-November or beginning of November through late April, you could go in and prune those guys back.
Good. I'm glad we got that taken care of. So
Yeah.
that one blooms on new wood.
Yeah, blooms on new wood.
Okay.
Other good thing about panicle hydrangea, one reason that people love them so much is of all of the hydrangeas, I would say it's probably the most drought tolerant.
Okay.
Wouldn't you agree with that?
I do agree. It's probably the most drought tolerant and tolerant of sunnier conditions. So
Yeah.
There's a few that can grow in the sun, but this one seems to perform the best in full sun. Definitely not full shade, but full sun to part sun.
Yeah.
For this one.
Yeah, full sun to part sun. I have one in an area that gets more shade and it doesn't flower. I mean, I just stuck it there because I didn't have any place else to put it, and I was like, I'm just going to put it here to kind of hold it over. And I haven't moved it since. I will eventually. I haven't yet, though. And it doesn't flower for me. It's still alive. It's still green, and it still grows, but it just doesn't flower. So
our panicled hydrangeas at home, we have like 3 or 4.
Mhm.
They don't bloom either, but they're in pretty good sun. Any guesses on why?
I have
I'm
idea.
pruning it properly.
Yeah, I have no idea why.
Something's pruning it for me.
Oh, the deer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
F-heads.
Good point. So the deer do love these guys, and the deer will hammer them. So if you have deer pressure in your gardens, maybe setting these guys back deeper in the landscape where the deer have to work harder to get to them, or that you're kind of hiding them.
Or
from the
using
deer.
larger cultivars. That way they can outgrow deer pressure, and the deer can't reach up that high is another
correct.
big one. So if you tuned in today to maybe get a idea of deer-resistant plants, abort mission, quit listening, because this hydrangea talk's not for you.
Yeah, correct. That's so frustrating too, because I like using hydrangeas in certain situations, and when I use them at work, the deer just smash them, and I'm like, I give up. uncle, waving the white flag.
I
So
know you do your planning and you're like, maybe this is the
Maybe.
year the deer don't find these ones.
yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say, like, of all of them that I've planted, I would say the oak leaves, they've probably left alone the most. And I don't know if that's because of the maybe thicker, leathery type texture of the leaf. I don't know.
Maybe at work, but not in my yard.
Yeah. So, anyways, panicle hydrangea, a few of the cultivars that we'll go over with panicle hydrangeas. We're just going to list a few here to kind of hit on a few different sizes.
The only and I'll tell you, we're going to talk about 3 that we like with different sizes. We were on a local nurseries page, web page today, wholesale nursery, looking at their offering of panicled hydrangeas, and what was it, 29?
They offered 29 different panicled hydrangeas.
They sell 29 different cultivars. And
that's one nursery.
Yeah, and that's just a small slice of the cultivars available. So this is really the hydrangea that if you're looking to fit it into any specific space, this one, you're going to be able to fit something into a super small space or a really big space and anything in between.
Correct. And colors too. They're putting, taking the traditional white flower and they're making them more colorful. And like you said, taller, smaller, narrower. We saw one at Cultivate that was like a fastigiate panicle hydrangea. I can't remember the cultivar of that one, but it was a more upright panicle hydrangea. They are even, aren't they making some that have like red stems and things like that? So yeah, so the options for panicle hydrangea are endless, but nonetheless, here are 3 that you're probably going to not have too much trouble finding at your local garden center or nursery. 3 of the most common ones to kind of fit some different sizes. So small size, 2 to 3 foot by 2 to 3 foot is the Bobo hydrangea. Very compact, very small. I'm telling you, it does not get much bigger than that, but it loads itself up with flowers. So you have these beautiful white panicled or conical shaped flowers that are on the hydrangea that just kind of fade to a brown. They don't really fade to much of a color or anything like that, but it's still the spent flower on it is still beautiful in my opinion. And as for no special fall color on the leaf, just kind of goes from green to yellow and then they drop off. But nonetheless, it fits a great small landscapes. You can even use it in like containers or pots on your patio.
I like that idea.
That. Yeah. So, and then for like a medium-sized panicle hydrangea, we have wrote down Little Quick Fire. So it would be a step up from the Bobos. So rather than that 2 to 3 foot by 2 to 3 foot, now you're talking that kind of like 3 to 5 or 4 to 6 foot by the same width.
Mm-hmm.
So what?
It's an airier. I would say it's an airier bloom. So it's not. So hydrangea flowers are just like clusters of many blooms. They're a little bit more separated. So it's an airier bloom, and the Little Quickfire starts white but fades to a pinkish red a lot more quickly than some of the other paniculatas. So I've been using it a lot. I found that it's pretty tolerant to the drier conditions.
Yeah, absolutely.
The little what was I calling it? The Little Quickfire.
Little Quickfire.
And then another one that is very popular and has been for a while is Limelight hydrangea, and it's going to be more in the 8x8 range.
Yep. Maybe a little smaller, maybe a little bigger, but yeah, you get it, a big shrub.
And it's got the white flowers, and they're almost a limey color too. It's kind of hard to explain the Limelight. Look that one up, but
kind
it
of
also
a lime green that fades to a pretty white,
and then eventually fades to a really like blushy pink.
Yep.
So, and just really giant flowers.
Yeah, we'll put that picture up of us posing with them at work.
Yeah.
We have the sunglasses and the hat on because their flowers are bigger than a human head. So
so those are Limelights?
I'm pretty sure that those are Limelights.
I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are. This year they don't look as good because around the base from the ground to about 4 feet, there aren't any flowers because of the deer. Mm-hmm. But then from about 4 feet up, it's just loaded with flowers because the deer weren't able to get to those flower buds.
Cool. That's a nice
So,
planting.
yeah, that is a cool one, and they really like that spot. They get just enough shade to really shine, I think, with those guys. So anyway, so that kind of covers panicle hydrangea. So quick recap on that. For the pruning, blooms on new wood, so prune any time from late fall until early spring. Cool? Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Next, we're going to go with another flowers on new wood. So same as the panicle, this one you would prune late fall until early spring, and that is Hydrangea arborescens or smooth hydrangea. For all of you native plant lovers, not that it really makes too much of a difference on the hydrangeas, but arborescens is the only native hydrangea to us here in Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
So you find them a lot I see them a lot kind of in southern Ohio and some of the limestone, stony outcroppings in, say, the Hocking Hill area, close to rivers, usually kind of in the understory setting where they're not out in the full blazing sun. So that kind of gives you an idea of where they grow as a native plant, but still will do good in full sun. I think that they would do better with maybe a little afternoon shade or a little break from that intense sun, but yeah. You have anything you want to add on the arborescens?
Yeah, the hydrangea arborescens, like Matt said, they're native, and they're a good middle point between a panicled hydrangea and a mophead hydrangea, which we're going to get into. But they've got the shape, the bloom shape is more of a mophead type shape. It's more round than pointed like the panicled, but like the panicled, they come in the same color palette as the panicled hydrangeas.
Yep.
So typically whites.
Traditionally white, yeah.
Lots of new pinks and reds coming on the markets, or whites that fade to pink or red. And some of these cultivars have just like giant blooms. I think of the cultivar Annabelle, which is kind of the classic cultivar for hydrangea arborescens. And this isn't head-sized flowers. It's bigger than head-sized flowers. Annabelle hydrangeas have giant flowers. And then the breeders came up with Incrediball, which was, it might have been a sport off of Annabelle, I'm not sure, but it's kind of in the same vein as Annabelle, but the flowers are a little bit smaller and they don't flop as much, but still very big flowers. Really, really striking hydrangeas. And when situated in the right place, just full of blooms.
Yeah, and with both of these hydrangeas that we're talking about here, we've kind of jumped into the cultivars that these are some you're probably going to find at the garden center or the nursery. So with Annabelle and would you say Incrediball?
Yeah.
Were you talking Incrediballs? You're looking at very similar sizes here. So most of your hydrangea arborescens, you're not gonna find too many that are much larger than or smaller than, with the exception of there's a couple out there that I'm seeing right here in front of me that will stay in that 2 to maybe 3 foot range, but most of them are going to be in that 3 to 5 by 3 to 5 foot range.
So not as much variability on size as the panicled, but definitely covered in flowers, and they're big flowers too. And like Matt mentioned, they're also blooming on new wood. So keep that in mind. They're in the same category pruning wise as the panicled hydrangeas. They're also in the same category of the panicled as deer food. Yeah. So just
the deer will
I'll say it again
those too. And maybe a little bit more on the watering requirements than panicle hydrangea, but still not hateful. During dry spells, it's not a bad idea to go out and maybe give them a little supplemental watering if you're able to. They would much appreciate it. But yeah, so some of the cultivars you're going to find is Annabelle, Incrediball, and then the other real popular one is called Invincibelle. So, and there's all kinds of different colors of each. There's dark pinks, light pinks, blush pinks. What's this one? This one looks like friggin' neon pink.
I'm such a fan of the classic whites, though, and I don't want to push my opinion onto you listeners, but I am just such a fan of the classic white of this one.
Yeah, and much like the panicle hydrangea, aside from the flower, they're not going to give you too much interest past that. As the flower fades and it kind of dies for the year, you can leave it on there, and it is a beautiful dried flower on the shrub. You can leave up for winter interest, but it's not going to give you a ton of like fall color interest.
No.
There's other hydrangeas for that, but
big leaves, a nice coarse profile in the garden.
Yeah, absolutely. So definitely, if you've got kind of a part sun or shade spot that maybe gets a little bit more water, and you want to put a nice little flowering shrub in there, definitely give your hydrangea arborescens a look, because I think that you could find something to fit the bill for that. So hydrangea arborescens, flowers on new wood, prune late fall to early spring. Moving on in the hydrangea talk, we are going to move past the flowering on new wood.
That's it for the new wood.
We're going to get into flowering on old wood.
Okay, so what's the first one we're going to talk about? Flowers on old wood.
Okay, do we want to talk about what that means first, though? Like flowering on old wood? Like
say the name.
What the next hydrangea is going to be?
Say the name.
Hydrangea corsifolia, or oak leaf hydrangea. Okay. Oak leaf hydrangea.
And this one flowers on old wood.
This one flowers on old wood.
So what does that mean?
So unlike the ones that set flower buds in the spring on new growth, rather than waking up for the spring and starting to push new growth and pushing these new stems and setting your flower buds, then this one actually sets flower buds on growth that happens the previous year. So with oak leaf hydrangeas or anything that blooms on old wood, you need to prune them when they're finished flowering. So
essentially what you're saying is these hydrangeas already have their flower buds set prior to the dormant season.
Correct.
So coming out of that spring, coming into that spring out of the winter, you're going ahead and you can prune the new wood stuff, but that old wood stuff already has the flower buds in place.
If you prune an oak leaf hydrangea in the spring, it will not flower for you that year.
Or it won't flower much. You will most likely take off all the flower buds, right?
So all of the flowers on old wood flowering hydrangeas, like the flowers for 2025, all of that magic's happening right now in the year 2024. So keep that in mind. We say after the new flowers, and the reason for that is when you prune after it's finished flowering. So like most of the oak leaf hydrangeas are finished flowering by now. You prune them now, and what that's going to do is that's going to allow that oak leaf hydrangea to kind of push new growth yet this fall. So when the temperatures start cooling off a little and we start getting better rains, that oak leaf is going to go into kind of a second growing season for it this year, and it's going to push new growth, and it's going to set those flower buds this fall. And that's very important, those flower buds setting this fall. So if you waited until too late in the fall, you won't allow it to have the time to set those flower buds for 2025.
A lot of folks will recommend just not pruning your hydrangeas that bloom on old wood. I'm not going to go that far because I think that sometimes you might have to prune. You want to get something down in size or shape it accordingly, and you do have to prune. So general rule is if it's a hydrangea that blooms on old wood, you need to prune it just after blooming.
Correct.
And you might be saying, well, I like those blooms through the winter. Well, when you prune it, you might have to cut some of those spent blooms off. That just might have to happen. And what I recommend is getting the cultivar that's right for your space so you don't have to prune it every year.
Correct.
So don't buy a oak leaf hydrangea that gets 8x8 for a spot that's 4x4 because then you're going to have to prune it every year and it's just going to make things difficult. So think about pruning your oak leaf hydrangeas maybe on a 3-year cycle.
Yeah.
So 2 out of 3 years, you do have those blooms, those spent blooms throughout the winter. But what are some of the key highlights of this? I know you love this one.
This is one of my favorite shrubs because I really feel like it's a true 4-season shrub, unlike a lot of the other hydrangeas. not taking anything away from the other hydrangeas. But what I love about an oak leaf hydrangea is its ability, one, to grow in full sun, to even like, it's very shade tolerant. Maybe doesn't flower as heavy in the shade or is a more airy plant in the shade, but nonetheless, it still does well in the shade.
Mm-hmm.
As far as drought tolerance goes, I wouldn't say it's as good as a panicle hydrangea, but it's better than some of the others. Maybe a little better than arborescens, I would say.
Absolutely. This is the first year I've seen my our oak leaf hydrangeas wilting.
Well, yeah, and we're in like a drought.
Yeah, they're not dying.
Up,
they're going to be fine.
Yeah.
But they're just the leaves have definitely like puckered in quite a bit.
Yeah. But aside from that, with the oak leaf hydrangeas, what I love about the oak leaf hydrangeas is, one, the bark texture and the bark color on these guys. So they're like a cinnamon, coppery, bronzy type, exfoliating type bark. So the bark kind of rolls off of itself. So in the wintertime, when there's nothing left on the plant, you get a very pretty contrast against maybe a snow or a heavy frost.
Oh, yeah.
Or when the sun hits it, it just kind of glows. So that's beautiful. You have just knockout fall color on them. Just the colors that come off these things, the reds and the burgundies. And
you can't see me, but I'm just shaking my head in disbelief at how beautiful the fall color is on the oak leaf hydrangeas.
Yeah, so the fall color is fantastic on them, and they really hold those leaves for a long time. I wouldn't consider them to be a completely marcescent type shrub, but they do hold onto those leaves for quite some time. What else about them? The new growth on them is beautiful. I think in the spring when they're pushing new growth,
fuzzy
it's got this pubescence to it, this kind of leathery look. You get these, sometimes the foliage that comes out is almost white in color. It's such like a muted lime green, backed against like some like darker, green foliage that's underneath.
It's my favorite hydrangea to photograph for sure.
It's just beautiful, and you have these big white panicle-shaped flowers that drape off of
big flowers.
Yeah, and these things bloom for so long, and then when the flowers start to fade, they kind of fade to these like muted like burgundies and muted pinks, and just fantastic fall color even on the flowers. So,
and public service announcement: just when you think you're out of the woods, the deer will eat off.
The deer will eat these too.
I have to. I know.
Yeah,
I have to say it.
I hate it, but it is true.
In our yard, we've let ours get fairly big, and they're kind of against a fence, creating a screen between us and the neighbor. And we've let ours get big, so they do eat towards the bottoms, but the tops are very lush and bloom a ton. So
yeah.
How about some cultivars?
So cultivars that you're going to probably find at the nursery. There aren't as many oak leaf cultivars, but still enough to fit any kind of size that you would need. But so the one real common one that I like to use quite a bit, because it seems like a lot of times landscape designs that I'm doing and things for different people, they're just in smaller spaces.
Yeah.
Gardens around the house,
That's
things
the trend.
like that.
That's the trend. That's where people are. They're looking for something for smaller spaces.
So that would be the peewee, oak leaf hydrangea. So you're talking 3 to 4 by 3 to 4 on this guy, with all of the wonderful attributes that I spoke of earlier. And then when you get into kind of a medium size, we're going to talk like Snow Queen, and I can't remember right off the top of my head where the Snow Queens are at as far as size. 6 to 7 by 6 to 7. Something like that. It's, you're not going to get a whole lot of variation in look on these hydrangeas. They're all going to be very similar in look. The variation's going to be pretty much just in size.
Yep.
For the most part. That's not 100% accurate, but for the most part, that's kind of how it's going to be.
They often fade like some of the others. They fade to a pink, and then some will fade to a more to a brighter pink or a more robust pink, or even reds, the whites. Yeah. But they typically usually start as the big white flowers.
Yep.
So, and then what's the big one?
So the big one is going to be just the good old Alice that's been around, tried and true oak leaf hydrangea. It's been around for a long time. And Alice, you're talking like 8 to 12 foot tall.
Yeah.
This is an old-fashioned-y kind of shrub. It's probably not going to fit into a lot of people's landscapes because of its size, but maybe you live on a farm or you're in a space that has a lot of room, and you could put something like this in there, and it's going to get big and tall and wide for you. So yes, that would be Alice. And then one other one we wanted to touch on, which is one that I have and Tim has, and
Brenna has one.
Yeah,
Brenna
has one.
from 2 weeks ago has one.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the what's it called? Little Honey.
Little
Honey hydrangea. So
I'll give you a little honey.
It's a sport of peewee. So what's neat about it though is rather than having green leaves like the traditional oak leaf hydrangea would have, it is like yellow?
Yeah, it's
like kind of like a
chartreuse.
yellow chartreusey colored foliage on it.
The one at my house is in full shade.
Yeah.
And it is like legit chartreuse until like midsummer, and then it kind of greens up a little bit. But if you look you can see both my oak leaves like from one angle. It is definitely more yellowy, but not like in a sick way, in a glowing way.
No, and I would say the more sun you give it, the more yellow that foliage is going to be. I know Megan's got some at Enniswood that are kind of tucked into the woods, and I'm sure to start off the season, the yellow is much more intense on it, but as the trees and the canopy grows above these things, you're probably going to lose some of that yellow color in the foliage.
So it's a nice dwarf to brighten up an area.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. 3 to 4 by 3 to 4 on that guy.
Great.
So Little Honey would be a good one. So yeah, that kind of wraps up oak leaf hydrangea. It, like I said, it's definitely without a doubt my favorite hydrangea to go with. But yeah.
But yeah, same here. The fall color puts it over the edge for me. I'm a fall color guy.
Me too.
If you know what I mean.
Me too. So I think it's easy to plan stuff for like spring and summer. It's easy to hit color on all of those, and that in all of those times. It gets more challenging though when you're trying to plan a landscape that
extends
doesn't just hit spring and summer, but it's like, okay, what's gonna bring interest to my garden and still make me happy when I look at it, and mid to late fall and then moving into the winter time. So that's when you need to start thinking about, you got to think past just flower and flower color and start thinking about late season foliage color. And then even, what's this plant going to look like when all of the leaves and flowers are off of it and there's snow on the ground, and that's when the oak leaves really shine. So cool.
For sure. And then as we wrap up, we've got 2 more to talk about, but I would say these are probably going to get the least of our attention.
Correct. Yeah.
The first being climbing hydrangea, and nothing wrong with this plant. It's just not as utilitarian because not everyone has a space where they can have a vine growing, right?
Yeah.
So this is essentially a hydrangea vine.
Yep.
So it's Hydrangea petiolaris. It's a climbing hydrangea, so it's a vine. It gets big flat-topped flowers, like kind of like a lace cap type of hydrangea, and it climbs very nicely, but not aggressively.
No, it's slow to start. What's the saying people always say? The year one it does something, it creeps and what I don't
leaps
know.
And
leaps and cheeps.
Yeah, this one is slow to go, and even when it does get going, it's still not super aggressive compared to a typical vine.
Yeah,
like some of the clematis might be, or like a Boston ivy, stuff that will just cover a large space in a blink of an eye. It's not like that. So I think that's why this is a really nice vine to use. Plus, like those things I just said, I think the flowers are superior. A lot of vines are just there for the foliage, but the blooms on this one, damn.
And it's like,
hot damn.
I think it's like a fine wine,
Okay, tell me more.
It gets better with age. So
like that.
But yeah, so this one here also prune. It blooms on old wood. So if you need to prune, I don't know why you would need to prune this unless
maybe just to like get it off of a window, because you've got a vine growing around your house.
But even then, like, you're not pruning the rest of the vine. You know what I mean? So it's still going to flower you. So, but if for some reason you wanted to take this thing like way, way back, heavy and hard, for whatever reason, it flowers on old wood. So you would want to do it you would want to do that in the fall when it's done flowering, or late summer when it's done flowering. That way, whatever new growth it does push in the fall, you're going to get, fresh flower buds on there. As far as cultivars go, there's not a lot out there. I have a variegated one that I bought at Mr. Maple. Don't know the name of it, but as far as cultivars go, I really...
You're not going to find that one at your local garden center.
That's like a rare thing.
If you're looking for a vine that's not overused and that's not super aggressive, I would go with a climbing hydrangea.
Mm-hmm. I love them.
And it's not like wisteria. It's not going to tear down a structure. It's pretty delicate.
Your mother-in-law Dee's got a beautiful one on their house, and that kind of, I've always loved these, and I've always talked about wanting one. But then when I saw Dee's earlier this year, I was like, bro, I need one of those on my house.
Shout out to Dee Ehrman. Hers is beautiful, tucked in a little corner of her back gardens, and I've been watching. So I've known them since 2007. It's what year is it now?
24.
13 plus 4, 17 years.
Wow.
And this thing is just gotten more beautiful, and I've never been like, man, it's outgrowing the space. It's doing what it's supposed to do back in that corner. Mm-hmm. It's lovely. So
I love it. Maybe we can put the picture of that up on the gram too.
Yeah, I've got pictures of it.
That's a great one. So that's a good one. I've seen them. Man, there's a really cool one that I saw at the in Traverse City at the Putt-Putt Golf Course, Pirates Cove in Traverse City. There was this like vine that was just climbing all across the ground. This thing's massive, 30-foot wide, but I don't even know how tall this little hill is that it's on. So they have it planted as a ground cover, and it's just kind of vining up this hill. I'm like, what in the world is this? And I'm like, holy crap, this is climbing hydrangea, and I got up closer to it, and it was just like, it's beautiful, man. I absolutely love the way they used it at this Putt-Putt Golf Course. So
speaking of Pirates Cove, what did the pirate say about the steering wheel coming out of his crotch?
What's that?
Arr, it drives me nuts.
We won't go there. Thank you. Did you remembered where that button was?
Yeah.
Good for you. You were waiting for that, weren't you?
I don't know. That came out of nowhere.
Oh, wow.
Let's finish this baby.
Yeah, let's wrap this up. So that was climbing hydrangea. And last but not least, it's probably our least favorite hydrangea, but probably one of the more popular ones for the, just everyday gardener, because most people love color, and that's the mop head or lace cap hydrangea, which
it's like super popular. People want them, and it's our least favorite. So it's like a double-edged sword in that way.
And we'll explain why. Yeah. Why that is. But that's hydrangea macrophilia or macrophylla, however you want to say it. Mop head or big leaf magnolia hydrangea. So with these guys here, they're going to be very similar in kind of shape and size and appearance to maybe the arborescent. The leaves on them may have a little bit more like serration on the edge, not as smooth of a leaf.
Some gloss.
A little bit more gloss
to the leaves.
But with these guys here, these are your traditionally blue hydrangeas. And the question that we always get here in Central Ohio is, why are my blue hydrangeas not blue? They're pink. And so with that, I tell you,
because grandma used to have a blue one out in Eastern Ohio. She used to have that blue one, and that's what I bought. Well, they don't just get blue. They get blue because of certain soil conditions.
Correct.
And in Central Ohio, where we're at, and then as you move west or northwest in Ohio, you're not just going to get blue ones. They're going to be pink.
Pink, yeah. And when I tell people that are upset about the blue, I first tell them here's how you can make them blue, and it's going to take a lot of work. And why does gardening have to be work? Gardening should be a fun thing. You're never going to permanently change the pH of your soil. So you're constantly going to be having to add fertilizers and soil amendments and, different things. What was it? Iron sulfate, aluminum sulfate, mere acid. There's the Hollytone products, the iron tone or the hydrangea tone or whatever it may be.
And not only do you just have to add them, it's not as simple as just sprinkling them. If you really want them to be effective, you need to dig out all the soil from around the roots of your plants and get the required quantity on the bag into that hole, and then put your soil back.
And then continually feed them with this
And then
stuff.
you need to do that over and over and over again. And to me, it's like, why are we putting in this much effort for a blue versus pink flower?
Yeah, just enjoy the pink flower.
Yeah.
You know, it's not an ugly pink.
And if you're fortunate enough to be in a place that has more acidic soil, lower pH,
fantastic.
Then you got the blue.
Yeah, we just talked about like when I go down south and stuff and I see these big blue hydrangeas, I'm like, they're beautiful. I'd love them. And I understand why people want them, but like I'm also like realistic about it, and I'm like, okay, like Macrophylla is one. I mean, they're hardy to our area, but they're not fantastic performers in our area to begin with. You know, the second most common question I get is, why are my hydrangeas not flowering? Well, what kind is it? Macrophylla. Okay, well, that's why.
Not surprised.
You know, up here, they're just not as shoot hardy maybe, or they will push out a lot of new growth early and set flower buds. Or it'll be on the flower buds from because some of them they bloom on old wood, but some of the newer ones will bloom on old and new wood. But a late frost is going to nip those flower buds.
That's what I find when I look out my slider doors at the two of these that we acquired when we bought our house years ago. We've moved them around, and they finally started blooming a little more. But it's that late frost, and I just watch it, and I watch the tips of those branches turn brown, and I go, there's a good amount of the flowers I was going to have on those. They're gone.
Yeah, so that's another problem with them in our climate. You know, down south, you don't have to worry about that. Even southern Ohio probably doesn't have to worry about that as much. But where we are and north of us, that's an issue. So that's kind of the problem with it. You know, they'd kind of require that lower pH for the flower color that you're looking for. But aside from that, the flowers are pretty. There's a million different types of them out there. Like I said, they bloom on old wood. Some of the newer cultivars like Endless Summer will bloom on old and new wood, and that's how they get that Endless Summer continuous blooming, is because they are flowering on both old and new wood. So with those guys, you can prune them in the spring and they're going to push flower buds for you that year, or you could just wait and do it when they're finished flowering in the fall, and you're going to get a whole new set of flower buds on both the old and the new wood. So
very pretty, but a lot less reliable.
And
than
just a lot more work
than the other hydrangeas we talked about. So if you want hydrangeas and you want blooms, this is probably one you want to stay away from. And if you want something other than white, then look into some of the cultivars of the Hydrangea arborescens or the Hydrangea paniculata, like Pinky Winky or something that's going to have more of a pinkish red. You're going to get much more reliable blooms on those species than you are the Hydrangea macrophylla.
Yeah, for sure.
And some cultivars that we, want to make note of these.
Endless Summer being one. Just the traditional Endless Summer blue round flower. Another one that I think is really pretty is the lace cap variety, is the Twist and Shout. And I think that they may have Twist and Shout in a couple different colors, but the one I'm thinking of is a pink one, and it's just, I say lace cap, I don't know how to explain it. It's just kind of a flat hydrangea flower with these little flowerets that come off of it. I don't know how else to explain it. Google lace cap hydrangea, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And then the new one that was kind of pushed this year we mentioned was Eclipse hydrangea, and that's the first true burgundy, almost black colored leafed hydrangea with just a big red flower on it. So, and that was introduced this year because of the solar eclipse that we had back in April on my birthday, April the 8th, 2024, the solar eclipse. So that was kind of what this one was.
Happy belated birthday, Matt.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. That one was kind of what this one was bred for, was the eclipse this year.
This one intrigues me just for the fact that it has a nice dark foliage, and it's one of the hydrangeas that can do a little bit more shade. So, I might be able to work with that from like a foliage color standpoint, and just be like, I'm not really worried about the blooms as much, but having that black foliage, that real dark purple black foliage in a partial shade area, okay, that I buy that.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing, too, I will say about the mop head and lace cap hydrangeas is they are the first ones. They're super dramatic. So at the first sign of a hot, sunny day, or the first sign of a little bit of a drought, not even a drought, but just a little bit of dry weather, these guys are like the first thing in your garden that's going to wilt.
Yeah, they're like
Doesn't mean they're
like me in July.
Yeah, for
whenever
sure.
I step
you
foot
are
outside.
like the hydrangea macrophilia. Yeah, for sure.
I take offense to it, but I get it.
You don't take offense to that.
Yeah, but I get it. I mean, I take
yeah.
offense to being compared to my least favorite hydrangea.
Yeah.
But I don't take offense to the other part.
Yeah. So they will wilt down real quick on you, but what's nice about them is just a little bit of water, or even just cooler evening temperatures. These guys bounce right back and perk right back up. So if you see your mop head hydrangeas, the macrophilias kind of wilting down, don't be alarmed, don't be concerned. It's very common with them. Just give them a little bit of extra water and they will be just fine for you. So yeah, so that kind of covers our hydrangea talk. Another type of hydrangea that's out there that we didn't talk about, we don't know a ton about, and it's one that we don't use here because it's not hardy to our area, is Hydrangea serrata, or the rough hydrangea, and that would be more for the south. That's another one if you know a little bit about them. They bloom on old wood also, just like the macrophilias, the corsifolias, the oak leaves, the climbing hydrangeas, all of those guys. These ones also bloom on old wood. I won't get into cultivars because I just don't know the cultivars of Hydrangea serrata. So if you're kind of interested in those, maybe give them a little Google search to learn more about those guys. But all in all, we covered most of your common hydrangeas, at least stuff that you're going to find like in this Great Lakes region. Really, with the ones we talked about, you're probably going to find all across the United States. So anyways, yeah, so that kind of wraps up the hydrangea talk. We will at some point maybe go into more depth on some of these guys, but
for sure.
we can or we can't. It doesn't matter to me, but yeah, that kind of really gives you a good rundown on the hydrangeas.
Yeah, long story short, the two that bloom on new wood, or the panicled and the smooth hydrangeas, are the ones that bloom on new wood. The ones that bloom on the old wood, like the oak leaves, the climbings, and the mop heads, if you're real pruner happy, you might not want to get these because there's just a larger margin of error for pruning and not having blooms on those.
Correct.
So
cool. Yeah, and we have a little bit of we have some resources that we can share with you. I set up a link tree for us. I'm going to put those links.
Yeah, there's a great proven winners graphic that we're going to put up, maybe one or two, and there's a great Ohio State resource that we want to put up.
Yeah, so I'm going to put those on our link tree, and they'll be in our Instagram and probably Facebook, kind of like about us area. So click on that, and you'll see the links in there. You can click on those and kind of read about them, and I'll leave those links up for anyone to reference back to. But in the meantime, if you have any questions on this, feel free to reach out to us. You can hit us up on Instagram. You can hit us up on Facebook, both Shrubby Buddies. You can hit us on Gmail, shrubbbuddies@gmail.com. I have the new link here in our podcast feed, so you can click on the, they call it on our host, they call it fan mail, but it's a link there at the bottom of the description that if you have any questions or comments or concerns, you can click on that and it will actually text us.
Send us fan mail.
So yeah, so we can get in on that as a way to communicate with you. Yeah, so I'm trying to open up more avenues for people to connect with us rather than just the podcast and Instagram. Like I said, Facebook. What else? I've got our podcast on YouTube now, I think. It's just like, it's not a live thing. It's just literally just the podcast on there with like our Shrubby Buddies logo, I guess, as the background image. But that's a different way for people to listen now. YouTube just got that all set up. Eventually we will have a website, and eventually we are going to do this whole podcast live thing where we're going to put some cameras on us. Eventually, we don't have the funds for it right now.
They're pretty expensive.
Yeah, it's not something where we could just run out and grab a camera. When we do it, we want to do it right. So eventually, when the funds are there, or if anyone wants to see that and help out with that, you know
how to find us.
You can get a hold of us. But yeah. So eventually when we can afford to do that, we're going to get some cameras and stuff on us.
But in the meantime, the Shrubby Buddies would like to say, next time you see a shrub, do not say hello, say hi, Hydrangeas.
No. Tim, I love you. Have you been thinking of that one?
Just like for the last 20 seconds.
Oh my God, you're ridiculous. So anyways, that kind of wraps up this episode. Tim, it was really good to have you back.
So glad to be here.
Yeah, the energy's just different when you're around. So anyways, everybody, I hope you have a wonderful week. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like I said, if you have any questions or comments or concerns, reach out to us. Give us some ideas on stuff that you want to hear, stuff you want us to talk about on this thing, and we will do our best to accommodate that. But yeah, in the meantime, we are the Shrubby Buddies, and love you harder +2.
Hi, Hydrangeas.
We out.